Hello, all. I'm back with the fourth part of this series, which is entitled Ideas Against an Uncastled King. And in this video here, white is being played by Gareth Kasparov and black is being played by Rajabov. And I want to say something before we start here, and that is Kasparov is the probably arguably the greatest player in chess history. And even he's not immune to leaving his king uncastled in the center. So this is a good example. Now, by design, I did not want to use Kasparov in two of my four games, but it just so happened the games that I found to be the most interesting just so happened to involve Kasparov. So I'm not anyway, um, you know, purposefully cherry picked games, where Gareth Kasparov was on the receiving end. But however, I do want to say it's by virtue of him being on the receiving end, we can say that if a world champion can sometimes get himself into a bad situation by not castling the king, so we can learn something from that. So with that said, Garrett kicked off with e4. Rajabov kicked off with e6, and we're going to go into a variation of the French defix, d5, knight c3, knight f6, e5, knight f d7, f4, c5, knight f3, knight c6. And so far, I mean, this type of position here happens, quite often. This is highly theoretical territory. And, most people may not like to play the French for such a type of position that you get as black like this, because you kind of pieces are kind of clogged up and kind of in front of each other. The bishops are blocked in, that sort of thing. So Kasparov goes bishop e3, a6, queen d2. Rajabov goes b5, threatening to kick the knight. a3, queen b6, deploying his queen. Knight e2. Now, some notes I'm reading on this game here by, I think you pronounce it Tatnik. He states that this move here leaves all known theoretical, continuation. That was at the time that he, annotated this game. I'm not that well versed in the French, but again, playing somebody like Gareth Kasparov, everybody knows the Beast of Baku. His preparation is probably bar none the best preparation probably that anybody can vouch for, and getting him out of known preparation is probably the best idea. Rajabov goes c4, g4, and Rajabov goes h5. And now, one thing I want to point out here before I move a little bit further is that, again, I'm just talking my way through the game. I'm not analyzing the game here. I'm not going to analyze the opening. I just want to get to the part to where that the king being in the center is going to be critical. So pawn takes, rook takes, knight g3. We'll see that knight on g3 actually is going to be a liability at some point in this game because the king is in the center. f5. Knight takes e5. Pawn takes e5. Pawn takes f5. Knight takes, knight f6. Knight g3. Knight g4. Bishop f4. Bishop e6. Getting close, guys. Don't you worry. And now, what we see c3 with just some ideas of just trying to block the pawn advance, because if nothing else, that queen side becomes very active, and being that black has pieces on the queen side. For example, we can see that his bishop is lined up here, knight ready to come in, rook is coming down, queen is coming down, and these pawns can just come. So I think Kasparov here was just trying to avoid any of that stuff. But that's what's going to be part of the liability here coming up. Bishop e7, knight g5, long castles. Now take note of this long castles here. What this long castles does is that it connects black's rook, obviously, but that pressure that black is going to have on the h file is going to be quite prominent. So whenever somebody has a king in the middle of the board, one of the things one simple idea is just to say, if I got an open file for my rook, and if I connect my rooks, can I maintain some pressure in a certain area of the board? And again, that's a very simple idea, but sometimes you need to verbally or mentally tell yourself these ideas, and that sort of keep you thinking so you can develop ideas. Because again, sometimes in some positions you don't know what to do, but if you have something, a mental note to kind of guide yourself, it may make you make better decisions. All right, so knight takes e6, bishop takes e6, bishop e2. Now, this is where the ideas begin, the real ideas. Now, if we take a look at this position here, the white king's in the middle of the board, bishop e2 to attack the knight seems very reasonable. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's quite natural that you don't think white is going to castle kingside. I mean, at least I wouldn't think so. Because there's you got two files open here. So I'm pretty sure he's not going to castle kingside. I mean, this is what I would be thinking. This would be kind of my thought process. And if I castle, this is me if I was white, and if I castle queenside, I mean, if he was to go, queenside castle, I mean, these pawns coming, knight coming here, bishop. I don't know. That may not be such a good idea either. So kind of in a way, Kasparov is kind of stuck in the middle of the board right now because there could be some long-term implications to castle to each side. So this is how I would think about this position. This is why I chose this game. Actually, I saw Rajabov replay this game on his new YouTube channel, and I recommend go checking that out. Actually, I'll put it in the description. But it had just occurred to me, like, just how easy it is to get stuck in the middle of the board if you just stay there too long. So we're gonna see what. So if you want to pause the video, just take a crack at what you think black did here. I would guess that it might be surprising for some, but once you really see the idea behind why he did what he's about to do, then it will all make sense. So anyway, Rajabov goes knight on g, takes e5. And I know you're like, whoa, he can just take, with the pawn and be okay. All right. So if he takes with the pawn, let's just take the example to say he takes with the pawn. Now comes d4. I mean, he can't really castle, because if you castle, for example, if you castle, for example, then, I mean, you just got something like this happening, takes here happening, or even pawn push being happening. So, I mean, there's just so many things going to happen. I mean, black is down a piece, I must say, but there is some compensation to why if you take with this pawn and push here. Now if you take, knight takes, and I mean there's a discovered attack on the queen. So that's something to think about. So as we can see, that when you get stuck in the middle of the board, it's really about activity of the pieces, and does your opponent pieces have any effectiveness or not. And in this case, I mean, take a look at this rook. This knight really ain't. I mean, this knight could do something like this, maybe at some point, but that's 2 moves away. This bishop right here is kind of, I mean, it doesn't really have a whole lot of scope. I mean, he could go here and threaten to trade. I mean, something like that. I mean, there's a lot of things, but in fact, if he went here, I mean, knight would just hop here and fork him because he's got that same, discovered attack here. So this, as we see, this sacrifice here has a lot of venom if you take with the pawn. And it's and although now I will say, based on the analysis of this position, this right here is not necessarily the greatest move in this position either. It's not the worst, obviously, but what it does psychologically, because you got to realize when you're playing against other people, the psychological component really makes up for a lot of how successful that attack is going to be. This will put a lot of people in a very uncomfortable position. And even Garry Kasparov, because we'll ultimately see, and I'll go ahead and spoil the story for a spoiler alert, that he doesn't even accept the sacrifice. He just accepts losing a pawn. But we're going to check out the other variation. So what about if he goes bishop takes? Well, if he goes bishop takes, we go knight takes, d takes, and there's a multitude of moves here that gives white some venom. For example, let's just start out with the one that let's just start out with this. Queen c7, okay, castles, pawn takes, and queen b1. I mean, these 2 pawns here, I mean, I think the activity of black's pieces, this bishop here is unopposed. I mean, I think black has compensation here. And again, this psychological advantage is huge. All right, let's look at another variation. Knight takes, bishop takes, knight takes, pawn takes. If we go here, we kind of see the same scenario again as we saw in the other variation, except for there's nothing opposing this bishop now. And in fact, we'll see that we'll see another variation here where that bishop is about to get some serious venom. Let's go back 1 move. Now watch this. If bishop goes to c5, what is the immediate threat here? That's not really an immediate threat. That's kind of a loaded question, but I'll show you what the potential threat could be. Just say if white done something like this. Oops. Then you got a pinned queen, right? But really, black is kind of stopping this bishop. This black bishop is kind of stopping you from casting on both sides of the board. So this keeping your king more stuck in the middle of the board. So far, the major ideas that we've seen is like, do you have, can you keep pressure on open files? Are you going to have some active pieces? Can you start an attack on whichever side? If the opposing side can castle, can you start a very quick attack on their king? And in this case, black can, because there's the pawn on a6, b5, and c4, and even the pawn on d5 makes a huge. It looks like black's king is open if you was to push in pawns, but really, if you look at a position, you can't really get at black's king so easily. Definitely, you can get at white's king much faster. All right, so black, what he does, again, we're going to see some more ideas coming up. Black actually goes queen c3. Queen e3. Just accepting the fact that he's gave away a pawn. Simply amazing, actually. Because that goes to show you that even Garry Kasparov, in a situation where psychological pressure means a lot, has been put under psychological pressure, because really the correct thing to do was to take it. That was the best case scenario. But this right here doesn't necessarily put Gary in, like, it's not necessarily that he's instantly losing, but he definitely his pieces are very disjointed. It doesn't look like it, but his pieces are not that highly coordinated. And he still has the castle. Yeah, he will castle, but all right. Knight quite naturally go back to e7. Eyeing the break on e5, and maybe even pushing this. I mean, it doesn't look like it, but this is a position prime for a pawn storm on that queen side. All right, queen takes e6. Bishop h4. Now, bishop h4, as we'll see, is a fantastic move that we're about to see here in a minute, because what it does is, don't forget, white's king hasn't castled yet, so his two rooks are disjointed. So that means that this pawn technically is X-ray pinned to this rook. And that's going to come into play here in just a minute. So we'll go queen to g4, g5, kicking the bishop, or forcing the bishop to do something. Bishop d2, rook d8 on the open file. White castles long. Now I would say that this right here is probably I can't remember my analysis on this game, but I'm pretty sure this right here is about probably losing right here. Although it doesn't seem like it. But I mean, everything's in black's favor. The rooks of everything is much more coordinated. Everything is ready to bounce in. Like if you look at all these pieces here on this side of the board, everything is ready to just start coming at some point. I mean, in some cases you can even take this and even bring this rook over here. So knight a5, rook f1. Now this was again as I'm reading the notes here, this was he refused to accept the peace sacrifice, but in his sharp position he made a serious tactical oversight. All right, so the tactical oversight is check. All right. Oh, that's the beginning. King d1. Now bishop takes g3. Now what's wrong with this? Let's take a look. If you take with the pawn, then comes queen g6, threatening mate in 2. All right, so bishop c1, queen goes to b1, queen to g5, queen takes g5, knight takes c1, queen takes knight, queen to e4 with the double attack, threatening mate, and threatening to win a rook right here. And that's absolutely a winning end game. In fact, that's going to be a whole rook down. All right. So let's just say if white decides to go queen take g3. I mean, it'll be almost equivalent. Here's a line I just found from Stockfish, which is about equivalent. And even if he moved over, I mean, it's still losing. I'm gonna just show you this computer line here, which show you part of it. Check. Queen take. Didn't even bother. Queen takes b2, and yeah, and I mean, just here we don't even have to go any further. I mean, it's just all. Black's pieces are so well coordinated here. So let's go back here. Knight b3, queen d1, bishop takes h3, rook to f7. Because this is where I'm talking about here. See, this pawn is pinned because he can't take it because at some point because of rook takes rook. Rook moves over to protect the knight. Bishop threatening the rook. Now black goes back in for that same sort of mate threat. Offers a trade of queens. Accept it. Rook takes h5. Rook coming over to the open file. Rook takes. Rook takes. I mean, knight takes. And here, I mean, really, we could. I'm gonna just play the rest of the game. The rest of the game out. But if you look at it, I mean, black is really material is equal. I mean, sorry, pawns are going to be equal in a second once black takes on h2. But however, white is now a piece down. And eventually he's gonna. And I like this move here, because if, for example, if it's just getting his knight more cemented, because he really want to bring his knight here. Because if he goes here, he just goes here. He just goes here just to get one of the bishop pairs out of the way. Rajabov really had a great technique on winning this game. He didn't even take on h2. All right, so bishop f7, rook e7, bishop h5, knight d3. And I mean, that's just over. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, we got these threats here, this threats here. It's just so many threats going on here. I mean, this rook is holding down this file here. I mean, that's almost mate. I mean, almost. That's just almost mate. But anyway, that's the video, guys. That concludes this series of what to do against a castle king. Again, the series it's not a whole lot of, I'm not trying to really analyze games or really analyze stuff in detail. It's just about having ideas, because what I find is that for me practically, and I'm hoping that, you know, maybe this can help some other people, that when you're sitting down at a chessboard, sometimes you just want just some ideas. I mean, sometimes you just say, take the example of you've been playing, you know, you're in the third round in a 5-game tournament, and you done played 2.5 hour games, and you're halfway through your third game. Sometimes your calculation may be a little bit off. You know, you might be tired, but if you got just some general ideas, it can help you weather the storm and even pull you out to victory. So anyway, you guys take care, and I hope you guys learned something from this series. And if there's any other type of you know, ideas or series you guys like to see, just let me know. Links will be in the description if you want to support the channel. Please subscribe and like. And if you know anybody else who may benefit from this, please you know, share this with them in hopes that I can get some new subscribers. I'm trying to reach my 1,000 goal mark, and so I can, you know, partner with YouTube. But anyway, you guys take care. Till I post again, have a good one.